Please give a nice warm round of applause for Keith Lubner.
Slides. That would have been pretty fun. My name is Keith Lubner. I'm managing partner of Channel Consulting Corp. Before I start, though, question for the audience. Is there a downside of technology? I'm trying to wake you up. Right now? Is there a downside of technology? Somebody. Somebody volunteer. Yes? Yeah, when it doesn't work. When it doesn't work. Anything else? I'm sorry, what was that? Okay. One more person. It's a time consumer. We noticed a trend a couple years ago on the downside of technology as it relates to sales. It was really interesting. And it coincided with something also very interesting. And we got a lot of phone calls from some very, very big vendors noticing the same thing with their sales force. And it's very applicable to you. The downside of technology, relationships. What we noticed in dealing with vendors and VARs and system integrators, and what the vendors noticed in dealing with those same individuals or same companies, were that people were getting away from, especially in the sales mode, getting away from establishing relationships. Why? Because they would use their smartphone, they would use their tablet, they would use their notebook, and they would try to communicate with their prospects exclusively through that mechanism. And it's really interesting because I took a look at my own world, my personal world, and I noticed how my kids interact with their friends. I noticed that, and if you notice it when you're walking down the street, people are constantly like this, right? Constantly. Salespeople were doing the same thing. And it was frustrating the vendors, and it was frustrating people in this room because they weren't being effective. That's what today's talk is about. It's about relationships. It's about how you ask the right questions and how you can combine those two to actually close more business. Again, my name is Keith Lubner. I'm managing partner of Channel Consulting Corp. We deal with both the vendor community and the reseller community. We're also releasing a new platform called Channel EQ. It's a Channel University platform, mobile-enabled, that helps solve some of these issues. Write my email down. There are 3 takeaways at the end of this presentation that you may want. 3 tools that you may want that could potentially help you with that issue that I'm talking about. And the issue revolves around the changing buyer's journey. You see, the buyer's changing, but the seller, us, we're not, and we need to change. And the reason is the buyer's going from ADA to the 4 E's. You might be wondering, what is he talking about there? It's real simple. ADA is how we do it, or how we did it before. As a salesperson, you're charged with developing awareness, interest, moving the prospect to a desired action. That's what we're taught. But that's not how buyers are buying today. Buyers have the power. They know more about your product, the SKUs or your services, the SKUs around the products, the services around the products, the pricing around the products, before you walk in the door. And then it becomes a commodity game. They know that. So they explore all of this through their relationships, through technology. They evaluate it. They know your references before you even give your references to them. And then they choose to engage you. And that's their entire experience. They call it the 4 E's. It's our job as salespeople to change from the left side of this to change how the buyers are buying these days. We need to become more of a coach in that process. We need to influence them at different levels. So what will better relationships do for you? It's kind of a different sales talk today. Don't take my word for it. We did some research on this because we were hearing an awful lot. Relationship quality and trust have the most impact on the willingness to accept your coaching and your direction. So what I said on the last slide there was you need to interact with your buyers in those 4 E's. You need to coach them through every one of those E's. Relationships, though, and the quality of those impact it the most, 39%. Second, you're trusted as an innovator in providing ways to help your customers, your prospects. And it helps you align to their business challenges even better. There are 5 primary business challenges that you will always encounter with customers, with prospects today. Operational efficiency, cost containment, customer responsiveness, revenue growth, and increasing market share. And aligning to those challenges is how you win more business and you grow your footprint within your customer base. And the only way to get there is if you have a better relationship. But what it also helps you do, better relationships that is, helps you get into line of business people even more so. What we noticed, and what our clients have noticed, is that the C-level suite, they're pushing down more authority to the line of business people to make decisions. And now with cloud, it's even more apparent. Because now they have discretionary budgets. Now they can spend the money the way they want to spend the money. So if you continue to sell at the CIO level and you ignore these other lines of business, you're missing opportunities. We're going to teach you give you some techniques as to how you can enhance the relationships and how you can get into those line of business personnel even better. But it's important to understand, what are customers thinking about you when you walk in the door? Kind of an interesting question. Well, they're thinking business, and they're constantly thinking about these primary 5 things. They need to be productive. They need to connect their employees in their offices. They need to work from anywhere. They need to secure their business. And they need to serve their customers better. That's what they're thinking for the most part. Right? A little bit outside of that, whatever, but that's primarily what they're thinking. But what they're also thinking, and what we're missing, is they're thinking this. Do I like you? Do you listen to me? Do you make me feel important? Sounds all fuzzy, doesn't it? Do you get me in my problems? Do I trust and believe you? Behind the business issues, every time you walk in that door, this is what they're thinking. And if you can't get over these first 3 here, you cannot ask the right questions, the right discovery questions that help you understand what's happening in their business, those business challenges that I just mentioned. You can't do it. Or you can't do it effectively. Let's try to show you how maybe you can. How can you connect to your customers and prospects better? The basics. There's 4 principles of sales conversations that we talk about. People respond in kind is a given. But the next 3 are things that you should commit to. Questions control the conversation flow. People communicate in stories, and listening is what truly builds emotional connections. Now, you may be saying, you know what, that's a no-brainer. Guess what? We've worked for over 10 years in this business, and specifically on this stuff for the last 2 years. Most organizations, most of their salespeople, when they walk in the door, what do? They start to go right into their pitch. And they start to tell all about the product, and all about the service, and how great your company is. And what are they missing? They're missing the first step in that whole process, and that's connecting to the prospect. So what's happening is everything that salesperson is talking about is going right over the head, right to the side, and that prospect is just doing this to you. And we talk to a lot of folks just like yourselves, and that's a frustration. They think they have a great relationship, and all of a sudden the business goes somewhere else. So if you remember a couple things from this presentation, remember that questions are so important, but listening is even more important. And it's all about who you are. It's your personal power. Whereas years ago we're taught, you want a position instead of influence. You want to force the issue instead of give the prospect power. You want to coerce instead of persuade. You want to control instead of having control over yourself. The proof is in the pudding, though. Those 4 E's are what's happening industry-wide across all vendors that we talk to. The buyer is moving that way, and that's how they're operating. And as a seller, this is how you change. First, you need to change yourself, and then you need to change how you interact with your prospects and your customers. We call this the layers of influence. Before, it was really simple. You're dealing with one primary target within your customer or within your prospect. Today, you have multiple layers of influence, and you're wearing different hats as you influence or as you interact with these folks. What hats are you wearing? You're a trusted advisor, you're a coach, a mentor, or even a teacher in some aspects. And in other aspects, you're dealing with a consultant, a prospect, executives, and managers. If you think you can deal with each one of these layers the same way, you are sadly mistaken. Often at times, you're acting as a trusted advisor to these folks here and as a mentor to others. You have to recognize these layers of influence, is what we're talking about here. You have to recognize that they're important. You have to recognize that they're in play in today's society. They're in play with how buyers are buying. So rather than what we used to do, rather than try to convince somebody on our product, try to coerce them with our pitch, you now need to talk to them and understand what's important about their situation. And then you need to align to that importance. It's a shift, and it's not an easy shift for salespeople to make. So we've drummed up 5 rules of communication. The first 2 are really the ones that you really need to take a look at. If you want to know what your customer is thinking, they have to tell you. It sounds obvious. This goes back to the listening part. If you focus in a sales call on listening more, you will learn more. I guarantee it. And never answer your own questions. I've been on sales calls with clients, both vendors and resellers alike. And the absolute worst thing that happens is the salesperson asks a question of the prospect, and the prospect tries to get a word in, and the salesperson railroads it. And they start answering it for them. And they don't truly understand what that prospect situation is. It happens time and time again, and I'm sure it happens to everybody in this room. Take a pause. Never answer your own question. So we realized over the course of these last couple years, this was an industry-wide problem. This was happening across the board. We're getting phone calls a week on this. These are the soft skills around selling that people are absolutely missing these days. So what we tried to do is develop what we call the 21 traits of a highly effective salesperson. Okay? This is the first takeaway. I have a really quick assessment model that you could just take, email me, I'll send it to you, you could take it, you can assess your salespeople or yourself on these criteria. And it's all around empathy. You seek to understand others and work from their perspective. You have self-control. Self-awareness is really the building block of the entire thing. You have the ability to know your situation and to adapt to that situation. And this is really important when it comes to the personalities of the prospects and customers that you may be dealing with. I'll show you that in just a minute. You have a thirst for knowledge and you have self-motivation. And there are all these questions around this. Again, I have a self-assessment model that you can take. Okay? I'm not selling it to you, it's free. Just give it to you, you can see where you stack on this continuum. And it goes across all these different areas, empathy, self-awareness, et cetera, and you get a score on the bottom. I think you're going to be amazed at what you score on this, by the way. And as I said earlier, understanding your customers and your prospects are even more important. So understanding yourself and what you're good at, but understanding how to interact with your customers and prospects is even more important. We've all seen these sort of people, though, in our sales calls, right? And I have been on sales calls, and I've seen where the salesperson has tried to deal with one of these personalities in a different way, and it hasn't been good. I think you probably have too. These are the 4 primary personalities that you will encounter on a sales call. Number 1, the driver. We all know who this person is, right? They get it done. They need to be in control. So what you need to do is you need to be confident, to the point, and direct, and lay it right out for them. What you also have is the socializer. We all know these people, right? They need to tell their story. They need to feel good. They need to feel validated. So what do you do here? You make it personal. You build a relationship with them. You talk about the Royals. You talk about the Mets. You talk about whatever. You make it personal. Take a look around their office and see what pictures they have up there. But you're not doing that with the driver. I'll tell you what the driver will do to you if you do that to them. The analyzer. They need their ducks in a row. They're very analytical. They want option A, they want option B. They want it laid out for them so that they could take a look at all the different options that they may have. Then you have the consensus builder. They avoid conflict. They don't want to make a mistake. They're very, very deliberate. And for a salesperson, it's agonizing to work with these people because they take forever to make a decision. Here's the point, though. If you go into the sales call, and if you start to talk to the consensus builder as if you're talking to the driver, I'm laying this out for you, here's what you need to do, when are you going to make the decision, the consensus builder will flounder. He will not respond. Conversely, if you try to build a relationship, ask about the family, ask about fishing, ask about whatever with the driver, you will fail. So the key is understanding who you're dealing with, and then understanding the tactics when you're dealing with those people. And why is this important? This is important because it helps you build and get through that first door that we're talking about. That's relationships. It helps you understand who you're dealing with and how you need to deal with them. So here's some questions to determine personality. You might want to write down a couple of these. How much time do we have today? A driver will say you have 10 minutes on the nose. You've got to be in and out. Right? The socializer? I don't know. Maybe we can go to lunch. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do that, et cetera, et cetera. Now you know how you deal with that person. It's a great first question to ask. How will you make the decision about this? Right? The analyzer. Well, I'm going to take a look at 45 quotes, and I'm going to analyze every single one of those quotes. Then over time, I'm going to make the decision. Your style needs to adapt to that person, and you understand how you need to present things to them in an A-B scenario. What is your process? Who else will be involved in your decision making? How was your weekend? Did you do anything special? You can ask that of the driver. They will deflect that in a heartbeat. I'm sure you've been in those situations where I don't have time for that. Let's get down to brass tacks. What outcome do you expect as a result of this meeting? And then look at their office. A very plain office, driver to the point, let's get it done, let's get going. An office decorated with a lot of things in it, they're a socializer. This is something that's been missing over the past couple of years. We have clients, we have vendors calling us up specifically asking us to teach their salespeople how to do this. And it's really basic stuff, but we're missing the boat on it. So in your next sales call, try to take some of these questions and try to figure out who you're dealing with on that next sales call. Because it'll help you do a couple things. Change your body language, change your tone, the sales approach, your proposal style. It'll help you align a lot better. And it'll help you open up more doors. But what about your personality? Typically, we fall in 3 different areas. We have introverts, right? We all know who they are. Just want to be on the computer, leave me alone, let me get my work done, et cetera, et cetera. And there's salespeople that are very good at that. Right? And this is coming not from me, this is coming from a study done by a University of Pennsylvania professor. He studied a software organization in the Philadelphia area on the most effective salespeople and what their return was. And then he equated it to dollars per hour. So he said introverts were producing about $120 an hour. So I naturally thought, all right, well, the best salespeople are extroverts, right? You think that they would be the best salespeople. No, they're better. They're $125 an hour. I scratched my head when I read this, like, well, a lot I know. And this is recent. I read this about 4 weeks ago. At a whopping $208 an hour, ambiverts, the ability to not only talk, but also listen. The ability to adapt to the different personalities that exist at the customer. The ability to develop relationships as opposed to drive those relationships. The ambivert was well above both the introvert and the extrovert. That's the power of relationships. That's why it's important, right there. The proof is in the numbers. And what this also allows you to do is develop a better emotional connection. We've been talking about connecting here, which is the first step in the process of really getting a deal done. Connecting is all about, do I like you, do you listen to me, and do you make me feel important? Being an ambivert. Having that ability to connect to your prospect. Once you get over that hurdle, once you get through that door, you've made that connection, you can then ask great discovery questions and move much faster through the sales cycle. And much faster to where you are actually shaping buying decisions. Because you made that connection. If I were to poll everybody in this room independently and ask, who is your best customer and why? I bet you most of you would say, because I have a great relationship with them and they trust my recommendations. I bet you that's what it would be. You've worked hard to get to that connection point. Now we're saying everybody needs to be able to do that. Everybody within your organization needs to be able to do that to be effective. I love this slide because it's right here in this quote. Each interaction with a customer creates an experience that they will feel and they will remember. And they're cumulative. And over the foundation of time, you get long-term relationships and you get loyalty, which is really where we all want to be with our customers. But you can't get there unless you open up that first door with relationships. And now that you've earned the right, you open the door, this is where you ask better questions. You ask great discovery questions. Why? Because the buyer has changed. Therefore, the selling process has to change. Whereas traditionally, you're at the back end of this. You're responding maybe to an RFI or an RFQ or what have you, but you're responsive in nature. And you do most of your selling at the back end. Whereas now, because of this change that's occurring, it's more up front. You need to be more consultative, which means you have to ask better questions up front to frame up the opportunity, to assess the opportunity, to set the objectives, to be that trusted advisor. That's great, Keith, but tell us what we need to do. Show us. Give us the ammunition. Show us the questions. Well, I will in a second, because there's a big difference between product selling and consultative selling. Consultative selling, you have longer-term clients, guaranteed. Product selling, you'll be in and you'll be out, and you'll be in, you'll be out. And it's a frustrating experience. Remember what they're thinking when you're asking these questions. This is what they want to do. And these are the challenges. Remember, these are the challenges that you're trying to overcome. So what questions do you ask around this? Well, you ask questions to understand the person, We just went over that. Relationships are really important. And you have questions around the business, those 5 challenges. That's what your questions should be when you're interacting with a prospect. This will help you uncover their true need, help align you to those business objectives and those challenges. And more importantly, build trust and confidence in what you need to ultimately present to them in the form of a solution. So here's a sample discovery process. This is the second thing that I can offer you. We have a document that has over 80 or so discovery questions. Okay, there's a lot, right? This is a sample. What are your plans for increasing the competitive nature of your organization? What changes do you see in your business moving forward? You're not product pitching here. You're doing discovery. What are your top 4 strategic objectives or goals for your organization for this year and for the next 3? People stop at the first question there. They don't get the next 3. What are the all-time best discovery questions, Keith? We were on site 2-3 weeks ago at a really large partner, and I posed the same question to them, to their sales team. There had 15 salespeople in the room that ranged in experience from 1 year all the way up to 25 years. So I posed the question to them. Give me your all-time best discovery questions. And I filtered this because some of their discovery questions weren't discovery questions. They were product questions because the 25-year guys didn't make that shift yet. But here's what they told me, and I can provide this to you as well. What are your top 4 strategic objectives? How does the tech team view the issues of technology? You're going to see a trend here with their questions. They were all rooted in the CIO, the tech area, right? Very few of them were in the line of business area. But now, more than ever, the line of business people have more money, so your questions need to start moving into that area. What are you having problems with today? Who is your favorite business partner and why? That's one of my favorite questions. Because you'll uncover a lot of things. You'll uncover their criteria, but you'll also perhaps uncover who the competition may be. You may say, well, I don't have competition. I'm the only one in there. You'll always have competition. There may be somebody knocking on the door. You'll always have competition. But if you ask that question there, then you can continually align to their expectations. Here are more. And I segment these out with, notice how all the CIO level ones. Now, the C-level ones, what keeps you up at night, is a good question, but a better question is, what is the result of not doing anything? You really get them to think about that. You'll notice these questions are not product specific. And this is why it's important. Look what the impact high performers have on organizations. Increase of over 50% in service quality and customer satisfaction. Growth rates of 60 to 300%. This is a Harvard University study. Return on sales of 200 to 300%. Return on assets of 150 to 300%. The rock stars of the industry are doing these discovery questions. The rock stars are getting things done with relationships. They're opening those doors, and the results are right here. Now, what's interesting is Harvard also did another study. They did a study called The Death of Solution Selling. Blew my mind. What they were getting at was, that first slide I put up there, ADA versus the 4 E's. They said the buyers know a lot more today, so you have to shift and change. They weren't necessarily talking about the death of solution selling. They were talking about how selling is changing. We call that business guidance selling. It's not a different methodology for you. It's a different tactic. It helps you unlock opportunities within an existing sales cycle. Whereas right now, what salespeople do is they go A to Z, because they're trained that way. They get the prospect, and they bring them all the way through the cycle, and then they close. And then what happens after that? They start all over again, right? They go right back here, they get the prospect, and they go all the way to close. It happens time and time and time again. Business guidance selling inserts in the middle of that process a way for you to uncover unrecognized opportunities within your prospect. And it's really simple to employ. All it is a way of getting your salespeople or getting yourselves to ask other questions during the sales process. Why is this important now? Well, a couple years ago, we were doing a cloud project for one of the major vendors out there. And during the cloud project, we asked a lot of questions, and we understood what some of the issues were around cloud and selling cloud. And the vendor, and all vendors, what do they do when they tell you about their solutions in the cloud? They talk about ROI, they talk about total cost of ownership, they talk about cost containment, they talk about all of these different areas. So when the Harvard study came out, we realized it's interesting. Salespeople need to shift in the sales process to build more pipeline quicker, but more quality opportunities. And this is what business guidance is about. Let me explain it. This is back in 2013 in March. I wrote this article, and it's been reprinted several times. And it's called Turning Your Salespeople into Consultants, Art, Science, or Bull. You can go there, you can read the article, and it talks about a lot of the things I'm going to talk about right now. And it's not a methodology that rips and replaces. It actually leverages your current sales process. And it leverages it when your current deal or your opportunity is almost at the closure point. And it goes across any methodology. All right, so what is it? Well, I'm going to give you 3 steps, and there's a worksheet that you could take or write my email down, send me an email that I'll provide you. Step number 1, what are you really trying to accomplish in your current sales cycle? So if you're trying to sell them some cloud-based solution, you're trying to accomplish really 3 things. You're trying to increase their sales, save them money, or you're trying to increase their productivity or efficiency. That's primarily what you're trying to get done in a current sales cycle. Number 2, what are the impact areas? Well, you're seeing a trend occur. Personnel, customer responsiveness, operational efficiency, all these topics that I've mentioned before. But at your customer, what are the impact areas for their business? And then step number 3, what are the possibilities? So, in this current sales cycle, Mr. Customer, you're going to save $20,000 because you're going to deploy in the cloud. You can move it from CapEx into OpEx, and you're going to make this savings. The next step in that, and what most people fail to do, the next step in that is you need to make the recommendation on the possibilities. From conversations with you, Mr. Prospect, you've told me that you need to do more things in customer responsiveness to interact with your customers better, but you weren't able to do that. Well, now you can do that. You can redeploy that $20,000 in savings right to that project. You're building pipeline, you're identifying needs, you're solving business problems. The only way to get there is through relationships, but now you're acting as a trusted business advisor, and you're building pipeline for yourself. You're showing them a way to get from point A to point Z, and you're doing it to your benefit. So what questions have I said to salespeople over the years that help them get to that point? It's really simple. In your next sales call with your prospect, or your next sales cycle and you have an update call with them, ask them what projects have been on the back burner. Go ahead, ask them. They will tell you. They will tell you, oh, we've been wanting to do this for so many years. If you can show them how to do that through business guidance, you're going to win another opportunity because you're going to justify it for them. Who is involved? Have you figured out a budget, and can you introduce me? Now you're armed. You're armed and ready to go in. So whoever you're introduced to, you can align to their personality effectively, and you can cost justify how they can do this new project. That's what business guidance is about. This is the worksheet around this. Send me an email, I'll send you this one as well. This is the 3rd item that I'm talking about. And it goes exactly step by step over what I just went through in a lot more eloquent detail. So there are 5 things really you should take away from this. Change is the new standard of business. The buyers are changing. They're changing the way they purchase. You need to change as well. And there are 5 levers of influence that you really need to focus on in order to be effective. Being likable and connecting is really important. You saw the stats on that. Solving problems, building trust, and creating a positive emotional experience with your prospects. That's what's winning today. And it's people buy from people they like, trust, and believe will solve their problems. If you don't believe that, we shouldn't be in sales. A question you ask is way more important than anything you will ever say. Ask a question, be quiet, and listen. You will learn way more than you ever thought you would. And silence can be deadly, right? If you are quiet, it's first to who talks, right? They will talk first. Create a positive emotional experience. Engage them on that personal level. It's powerful. We are hearing from vendors all the time about this. All the time. And the power of empathy cannot be stressed even more. Try to get in their shoes is really what it's all about. Try to understand it from their perspective. If you can, you build a relationship better. You can charge more because they trust you. I'm not ashamed to say we're going to be releasing some of these things in a new platform called Channel EQ. Coming 1/1/16. Peak channel performance fast, and it's a university, it's an online, and it's also a mobile app. Virtual classroom training, self-directed, helps you with all of these issues and helps you move along that spectrum a lot easier. Thank you, and I'll take any questions now.
Okay, I got a mic coming here, just so we can all hear you.
My question is, on your teaching, is it only online or do you have in-person sessions?
In person as well. Yeah, there's a methodology we call adaptive partnering, and we're rolling this out, again, come January 1st. It is online, it's also in a workshop environment, it's in a webinar environment, and it's going to be mobile-enabled and online. Yeah.
And Keith, will we be able to share your deck and all your contact information right with everybody? Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. If you want
Okay.
those tools, send me a note. I'm happy to provide them to you.
All right, any other questions?
Hey,
Keith, thank you
thank
very,
you.
very much.
Thank you.